third day after I ran out on my wedding, my fiancée killed herself in our new home, leaving her entire estate to me. While going through her things, I found a wall covered in pictures of me. Her housekeeper told me, "The missus had been fond of you for many years. She'd been through so much tragedy and suffered from severe depression. The only thing that seemed to make her feel even a little better was seeing you or just thinking about you." Every word was a gut punch, suffocating and filled with a strange, desolate sadness. So when I got a second chance and my childhood friend laid out the escape plan again, I just smiled and refused. "I'm not leaving," I said. I wanted to see for myself just how foolish this girl who loved me more than life itself could be. Candy Sterling died on the third day after I skipped out on our wedding. My father and brother had just told her, their faces etched with apology, and they had barely left the estate when they got the call that Candy had cut her wrists. They couldn't save her. In a will she'd drawn up long ago, she left everything she owned to me. When my brother called me in Los Angeles, I felt my whole body go rigid. To me, Candy Sterling was just some stranger who had shown up out of nowhere and strong-armed me into an engagement. But every piece of evidence suggested she had been in love with me for years. I flew back home at her lawyer's request and numbly took the urn containing Candy's ashes. Her past was a complete mystery with no known family. The housekeeper looked at the simple, square box with profound grief. "She was fond of you for so many years," she told me quietly. "Her depression was so severe. Seeing you, or even just the thought of you, was the only thing that brought her any relief. I truly believed that once you were married, she'd finally find some peace. I never imagined this would happen." Her voice trailed off, holding no blame, but my heart twisted into a knot anyway. An assistant handed me a key. "This is the estate Ms. Sterling prepared for you." She decorated the house herself. It was the place she had died. The estate was huge, with a riding ring built on the sprawling green lawn. The decor was done in my favorite shade of light gray. The furniture, the art, everything was perfectly tailored to my tastes. One of the rooms inside was covered, wall to wall, with pictures of me. I looked closer and realized they started from my sophomore year of college and continued right up to the present. It was like I'd been living under her watch this entire time. On the floor, the mottled, dark stains from where she'd bled out still carried a faint, metallic scent. Everything about it was chilling, suffocating, and filled me with a profound sense of desolation. A fresh wave of anger washed over me. If she liked me, why didn't she just say so? She had stormed into my family's life like a gangster demanding a murder marriage. How could I have ever agreed to that? Was this whole tragic mess designed to make me feel guilty for the rest of my life, to make sure I could never forget her? In her dreams, I donated the entire inheritance, including the estate. The cleaning crew tore the photos from the walls and tossed them onto the floor, covering the last traces of her blood. And just like that, Candy Sterling's brief, legendary life vanished from the world without a trace. It took me 3 days to accept that I had been reborn. 3 days ago, Candy had just come to my family's home, demanding a marriage alliance with tactics that bordered on extortion. My childhood friend, Chloe, heard about it and immediately urged me to leave, to fly out to Los Angeles for a while until things blew over. That's exactly what I did in my past life. But this time, the memory of that photo-covered wall and the horrific bloodstains on the floor made me calmly shake my head. "I don't want to go," I said. "I want to see for myself just how foolish this girl who loves me more than life itself can be." Candy's business empire was massive. When I went to her office building, she was in a meeting, but her assistant came down personally to escort me up, asking me to wait in her office. "Miss Sterling will be with you shortly." I just nodded. She was quick. I hadn't even finished my tea when she strode into the room. She stopped short when she saw me and said calmly, "Mr. Miller." Her expression was cold and distant, as if she were looking at a complete stranger. Her indifference left me speechless for a moment. Finally, I asked, "Miss Sterling, why are you so insistent on this marriage?" Candy's expression remained placid. "I decided I wanted to get married. I don't need a reason." I was completely floored. I stood up. "Well, I guess I'll be leaving then." For the first time, her composure wavered, a flicker of shock crossing her face. "You're leaving already?" I just stared at her, my face a blank mask, and watched as the color drained from her cheeks, a shadow of despair falling over her. Still, she stepped aside to let me pass. If I wasn't absolutely certain she was in love with me, I would have thought this was all some kind of bizarre game. I sighed and decided to take the lead. Why don't we get some dinner together? Our interaction was so awkward it seemed to terrify her assistant. As I was leaving, he kept apologizing. Miss Sterling, she's not very good at conversation. Please don't be upset with her, Mr. Miller. I'm not upset, I said. I smiled at him. Actually, I kind of like her. That cool, elegant type is right up my alley. The office door was slightly ajar. Through the crack, I clearly saw Candy touch her own cheek, a stunned look on her face. I gave a small smile and said to the assistant, I've asked your boss to dinner tonight. Make sure you remind her so she doesn't stand me up. He nodded eagerly, as if he was afraid I'd take it back. I walked out the front doors of the building. The moment I stepped outside, my phone rang. It was Chloe. I saw her name on the screen, calmly declined the call, and just stared up at the clouds, my mind blank. Chloe had been attached to my hip since we were kids, and she always had my best interests at heart. But whether they're your first love or just a friend, people eventually drift away as life goes on. It was the same way in my last life. She found a husband, had kids, and learned to keep a polite distance from me. So when I got trapped on a mountain during a geological survey and made my last call to her, her husband was the one who answered. He just mocked me, calling me a pathetic rich boy playing at being an outdoorsman. And while he was tearing into me, Chloe was right there next to him, saying nothing. I died up there, and I'll never know how she felt about it. That evening, Candy arrived early for our dinner. The atmosphere was frigid. I tried to make conversation, but she was like a black hole for topics. Nothing I said could spark any interest. I was getting exhausted. I put my silverware down on the table with a clatter. Ms. Sterling, you're giving me the distinct impression that you have zero interest in actually starting a life with me. Candy just lowered her head and apologized. I'm sorry. That's not what I want to hear, I said, my patience wearing thin. You've run a massive corporation for years. You're supposedly undefeated in negotiations, a master at reading people. But right now, you're making me feel like you couldn't care less about this marriage. Candy's face went pale, and I could see her digging her fingernails so hard in her palm that it was drawing blood. Don't think that, she said, her voice quiet. It's just, I've never been this close to you before. I'm not used to it. Her sudden, confession-like words took me by surprise. Her anxiety, the sadness in her eyes, the blood welling in her palm, none of it felt like an act. I suddenly remembered what her housekeeper had told me in my past life. Her depression was so severe. Seeing you was the only thing that brought her any relief. Ms. Sterling, I asked, suddenly overcome with curiosity. Have we met before? Candy's lips trembled, and her eyes darted away as she turned her head to look out the large glass window of the restaurant. We have, she said softly. When? I pressed, but she just shut down, refusing to say anything more. My enthusiasm waned. I went back to my steak and gave up on conversation. Candy didn't seem to notice or care about the awkward silence. She just stared, transfixed at my mouth and neck. Her eyes followed the path of the wine I swallowed, down to my throat, before her good manners seemed to kick in and she froze. I met her gaze calmly. She flinched and looked away, her face pale. She'd bitten her lip hard enough to draw a bead of bright red blood. I sighed in exasperation. If you want to look, just look. You don't have to be so secretive about it, I said. Barring any surprises, we're getting married soon. Can't you be a little more direct, Miss Sterling? Internally, I was fuming. Asterisk, she has hundreds of photos of me, has people watching my every move. She probably even paid off her housekeeper. If she hadn't died so horribly last time, I would have had a restraining order slapped on her for being a psycho. Asterisk, but her assistant said she was sick. I needed to be more patient with someone who was ill. I reached out and took her hand, ignoring how she instantly tensed up. I dabbed a napkin in my water glass and gently wiped the blood from her palm. You have beautiful hands. You shouldn't hurt them like that, okay? Candy didn't answer. She just stared into my eyes for a long moment before asking quietly, Does this mean you're willing to marry me now? Did you ever give me the option not to? She twisted the fabric of her dress, suddenly looking uncertain. Actually, if you really don't want to, you could. What? Run away? Or hunt you down and scream in your face? I looked her straight in the eye. I'd be fine doing that. But what about you, Candy? What would happen to you? The answer was obvious. She would die. In my past life, I could never wrap my head around it. How could someone be so fragile, so broken, that the mere news of me leaving would be enough to make them end their own life without even seeing me one last time. And yet, I couldn't stand the thought of her dying. Candy Sterling was an undeniable genius. She had a killer instinct for business, but her origins were a complete mystery. Her competitors dug for years and came up with nothing, forced to just watch as she rode the tech boom straight to the top. She could dismantle the old, established Chicago families with a smile and a few casual remarks. Yet this brilliant woman killed herself over a man in the prime of her life. In my last life, Candy became a public joke, the poster child for being hopelessly lovesick. Her business rivals fueled the media frenzy, and the things people said about her were vicious. I didn't want to see that happen again. On the drive home, my mind raced. I glanced over at the impassive Candy beside me and decided I'd talk to her assistant in a day or two. I honestly had no idea how to interact with her. And then there was her illness. Was there really nothing that could be done? The black Rolls-Royce pulled up to my family's house, and just my luck, Chloe was walking up the driveway with a box of pastries. The light in Candy's eyes seemed to dim. Want to get out and say hi? I asked, glancing at her. She's my neighbor's sister. No, Candy said, her knuckles white on the steering wheel. You should go inside. She said it was fine, but the air in the car grew instantly colder, thick with a bitterness that felt palpable. I looked out the window. We're just friends, you know. Don't read too much into it. I won't, she said. You sure? I glanced over and saw her gripping the wheel so hard that old scars on her knuckles stood out. I rubbed my temples. Ms. Sterling, if something is bothering you, can you please just tell me? It's going to be impossible for us to get along if you keep everything bottled up. Pushed by my question, Candy turned her head away and said slowly, I don't like her very much. Then you don't have to interact with her, I said, patting her head reassuringly. She's just a friend. You don't have to force yourself to like her. Besides, we're going to be married. Our relationship will be infinitely closer than mine and hers. If you're uncomfortable with how close we are, I'll make sure to keep more of a distance. Kenny looked surprised. You distance yourself from her for me? Why wouldn't I? I pressed my advantage, leaning closer. See? Things get resolved when we actually talk about them, right? If you're ever upset with me, or if there's anything you need to say, you have to tell me. Don't just bottle it up and drive yourself crazy while I'm completely in the dark. That's not fair to either of us. I was starting to realize that Candy had absolutely no idea how to navigate a close relationship. She treated romance like a business negotiation, strong-arming my family into an engagement. But the moment I showed a flicker of genuine interest, she was completely lost, unable to respond. Her emotional intelligence was frighteningly low. It's okay, I thought. I can teach her. Chloe watched me get out of Candy's car, her hand clutching the pastry box so tightly her knuckles were white. She looked fragile. As the car pulled away, Chloe walked right up to me. So you've really decided to marry her? She's beautiful, she's wealthy, and she's scandal-free. Why wouldn't I? But she started then stopped. She looked flustered, taking a couple of quick breaths and pressing a hand to her chest before finally forcing out the words. Are you sure you even like her? In our world, how many people marry for love? I shrugged. She's a suitable match. Chloe's eyes went wide. More suitable than what we have. Chloe, I cut her off, my voice sharp. I'm getting married. You need to stop saying things like that. People will get the wrong idea. With that, I turned and walked toward my house, leaving her standing there. Honestly, even with a second chance at life, I've never been able to figure Chloe out. Sometimes she was the best friend in the world, like when she stayed up all night by my hospital bed when I was sick. Other times, she was the worst, like how she still can't remember my birthday. In my past life, I'd asked her about us getting married, but she turned me down, saying she wanted to have fun for a few more years. Then, on a ski trip to Aspen, she met some big, handsome guy, fell in love at first sight, and was married with a kid on the way in less than 3 months. Her husband couldn't stand me, so we stopped talking. I never thought that would be the last time. I imagine Chloe must have been at least a little sad when she heard I died. After all, I was the one who held her hand and marched up to the townies who were bullying her, making sure they got what they deserved. The next day, when I went to see Candy, she was in a meeting again. I watched her through the glass wall of the conference room, her brow furrowed in concentration. I waited in the break room and tried to chat with her assistant. He was tight-lipped, dancing around all my questions. Even when I directly mentioned her illness, he played dumb. I was getting frustrated. Don't you think it would be better for her if I actually knew what was going on? But Ms. Sterling doesn't want you to know, he insisted. She wants you to see her as perfect. He added pointedly. She really wants you to be able to depend on her. What are you two talking about? Candy asked as she walked in from her meeting. She ran a hand through her hair, looking drained. Just discussing whether someone as beautiful as you has had any work done, I said, lounging on the sofa. Your assistant says you haven't. It's almost unbelievable. You're just naturally stunning, Miss Sterling. Candy froze. Her assistant had already made a discreet exit, closing the door behind him. In the sudden quiet of the room, I could hear the soft rustle of her dress. Her voice was a little hoarse when she spoke. You like the way I look? Is that so surprising? I raised an eyebrow. Don't tell me you don't realize how beautiful you are, Miss Sterling. I paused. You know, calling you Miss Sterling feels a little too formal at this point. I stepped in front of her and gently stroked her hair. It was silky smooth and smelled wonderful. I leaned in close to her ear. I'm going to call you Candy, I whispered. Is that okay? Candy shoved me away. She was suddenly, inexplicably furious. I couldn't understand why she was angry any more than I could understand why she loved me in the first place. She sat behind her desk with her back to me, her voice dripping with venom. Get out. But I was hoping we could get some lunch. No. Candy's rejection was instant and cold. I have a lunch meeting. What was her deal? I studied her for a moment, then said slowly, all right, just make sure you find time to eat. I walked out and waited just outside the door for a moment. I saw the assistant's anxious face, and then I heard it, the sound of something shattering, followed by Candy's pained, guttural cry. I had left the door cracked open on purpose. Her agonized, desperate shouts mixed with the sound of breaking glass. I tapped on her assistant's desk, my expression grim. Are you still going to tell me nothing? He hesitated, but I didn't wait for an answer. I pushed the door open and went inside. The sight of Candy was devastating. She was huddled in a corner, knees pulled to her chest, sitting amidst a pile of shattered glass. Her fingertips were bloody. I couldn't tell if it was from the glass or from her digging at her own skin. I crunched across the broken glass to get to her. Candy kept her head down, her body trembling, refusing to look at me. I gently placed a hand on her shoulder. What happened? She was so small and frail, barely 5'3". I felt like I could lift her with one arm. I crouched beside her and started carefully picking the glass shards from her palm with a pair of tweezers from first aid kit. She finally lifted her head and looked at me, her voice raspy. I'm hideous, right? What? Your hand. I paused, looking at her long, delicate fingers. I couldn't help but think how little she understood her own appeal. It's beautiful, I said. With a sigh, I leaned down and gently kissed her fingertips. Really it is. But that didn't seem to cheer her up. She asked, is that what you used to tell all your ex-girlfriends? What? All this being nice to me, calling me Candy. Did you treat all your exes this way? I was suddenly, uncomfortably silent. So that's what set her off. And here I was thinking my nickname for her had triggered some family trauma. Turns out it was just her obsessive romanticism flaring up. How could someone so powerful and brilliant be so completely tormented by her own feelings? I stroked her hair and sighed softly. You silly girl. I've dated my fair share of women. I'm a decent-looking guy from a good family, so there was never a shortage of interest, and a few of them I genuinely cared about. But in families like ours, dating and marriage are two completely different things. My dad made it clear to me a long time ago, date whoever you want, but when it's time to settle down, you come home and make a strategic marriage. I helped her to her feet and sat her down on the sofa. I called for the cleaning staff to take care of the glass, then got her a glass of water, bustling around her. Candy put her hand on mine to stop me. You don't have to do all this. Okay. I let her guide me to sit down beside her, my mind racing. She must have done a background check on every single one of my exes. I used to be pretty wild, did my share of stupid things. If she was going to hold that against me, there wasn't much I could do. Don't contact any of them again. Candy's sudden command broke through my thoughts. I turned to look at her and saw the deadly serious expression on her face. I almost laughed. Is that an order? Her whole body went rigid, and her breathing became shallow. She seemed to catch herself and quickly looked away, flustered. I mean, if you have to contact them, just tell me first. Otherwise, I might. I get it. I cut her off. I won't contact them again. I looked at her. Was that what you were so upset about? My ex-girlfriends. Candy didn't say anything. I sighed. Can you please just talk to me? This is exhausting. You don't say a word, then you suddenly get furious and start breaking things. I don't even know how to begin to calm you down. So all your exes were better at this than I am? Is that it? Candy suddenly interrupted, her eyes bloodshot. She sounded like a petulant child. How do we get here? All I wanted was to have a reasonable conversation. I sat up straight and said, exasperated, if you're going to be upset about my past, there's nothing I can do. I don't think having dated a few people is some unforgivable sin. The past is in the past. Why are you so obsessed with it? Does interrogating me about every detail really make you feel better, Ms. Sterling? Fine. You want the truth? Yes, I've been in relationships before. And yes, when I was with them, my feelings were genuine. Does hearing that make you happy? Candy's eyes grew even redder, brimming with tears. When she saw me stand up to leave, she desperately reached for my sleeve, but I pulled my arm away. My own voice sounded distant. I really thought if I just played along, we could make this work. But now I see I just can't figure out how your mind works. Looking at her tear-filled eyes, I softened my tone. You're clearly not happy when you're with me. You're literally hurting yourself. Candy, maybe we should just call this whole thing off. No. Candy's gaze was resolute. She looked up at me, her eyes red and raw, and gripped my arm with surprising strength, repeating the words over and over. We are not calling it off. Our faces were so close I could see the fine, downy hair on her cheeks. With her pleading tone, it really felt like I was bullying a small child. My mind went blank as I ruffled her hair and asked her one more time. So, tell me, why do you really want to marry me? Candy's eyes flickered, and she tried to look away, but I gently took her chin and turned her face back to mine. Tell me, Candy. You have to tell me. I stared into her eyes. I'm tired of being completely in the dark. Her eyelashes fluttered, and she stammered, I want to marry you. But why do you want to marry me? Her eyes filled with tears as she looked at me, a silent, desperate plea. She couldn't bring herself to say it, so I did it for her. You're in love with me, aren't you? You silly girl. Why is that so hard to say? I gently caressed her cheek and tried to stand, but she pulled me back down, pushing me against the sofa cushions. Her meek facade shattered as she wrapped her arms around my shoulders and began to sob quietly. I'm disgusting, aren't I? She whispered. For someone as disgusting as me to love you, it must be repulsive, right? I stared at her in disbelief. What on earth was going through her head? Disgusting? Repulsive? Did she have any idea that online polls consistently ranked her as the most desirable wife in the country? How could someone like her have such cripplingly low self-esteem? I felt like I was on the verge of understanding something important. I cupped her face in my hands, tilted her head up, and wiped away her tears. My friends were all insanely jealous when they heard I was marrying you. They said I must have the luck of 10 men. Why do you think it's something to be ashamed of? She just buried her face in my neck and said nothing. At least she had stopped crying. I patted her on the back and sighed. Candy, can you please try to have a little more faith in yourself? You own a 32-story skyscraper. Everyone in this city calls you Ms. Sterling with respect. And on top of that, you're gorgeous. Is it really so strange that I might be falling for you? Candy's body trembled slightly. She asked in a tiny, incredulous whisper, You like me? What do you think? Do you think a guy shows up every day just because he's bored? I patted her back, my voice gentle. Candy, guys don't waste their time on women they're not interested in. You need to have some confidence. You're an amazing person, truly. And we're going to be amazing together. Trust me. And with that, Candy started crying again, her warm tears soaking the collar of my shirt. You can't be lying to me, she sobbed. I'm not, I promised. My heart completely melted. I gently stroked her earlobe, feeling the warmth of her tears on my neck and the rapid beat of my own heart. Maybe it's just that I've never dated anyone like her before, I thought. It's new. Candy was just so incredibly fragile at her core. A single word from me, a slight change in my tone, could send her spiraling. It was not something you'd expect from the CEO of a major corporation, but the reality of it was as bizarre as it was undeniable. She stood up awkwardly, her cheeks bright red, though she tried to maintain her usual cold expression. She looked at me and asked quietly, Are you hungry? A little, I admitted. I stood up and straightened my shirt, which had gotten rumpled, pulling it down to cover the strip of skin that had been exposed. Candy turned her head away, her face as red as an apple, and it made my heart skip a beat. Could she really be that innocent? She was almost 30. Surely she wasn't still a virgin? I pushed the thought aside and said lazily, Just have your assistant bring something up. I don't feel like going out. Okay. Candy went out to speak to her assistant. I watched her silhouette against the light, her slender legs and tiny waist, and I sighed. Beautiful, a perfect body, rich, and completely devoted. If it wasn't for her psychological issues, a girl like her would have been out of my league for 1,000 lifetimes. A big part of Candy's mental instability stemmed from her insomnia. Her assistant, looking deeply embarrassed, told me that most nights, Candy could only fall asleep while holding a picture of me. I didn't ask where she got the pictures. The assistant seemed relieved that I didn't press the issue. When I went back to her office, I just watched her work for a while. Her ears started to turn red, and she was clearly losing focus. Finally, she put down her pen. "Is there something you wanted?" I nodded without thinking. After a moment, I remembered why I was there. "Can I go see the house? The one you've been preparing for us?" Kenny looked surprised. "Why the sudden interest?" "I just want to see it. It's going to be our home, after all." She never said no to me. She just nodded. "If there's anything you don't like, you can tell me." Stepping into that elegant, stately home again, I felt my eyes well up. It was so bright, with sunlight streaming through the windows, warming everything it touched. It felt comfortable. It was nothing like the cold, shadowy place I remembered from my past life, the one that made you want to run. I glanced up at the locked room at the far end of the second-floor hallway. I knew what was inside. Walls of my photos, and the oil painting she'd done of me, the one where she'd even captured the small mole by my eye. I followed Candy into the master bedroom in silence. The bed was made up with traditional, bright red wedding linens, embroidered with characters for joy and happiness. Standing there, I felt a strange urge to both laugh and cry. I tugged on Candy's sleeve. "You really want to marry me this badly, huh?" "Yes," she said, blinking her lovely eyes. "Is something wrong with it?" "No, it's all perfect." I pulled her down to sit on the edge of the bed with me. "When did you start all this?" "Just in the last few days." She automatically offered me her hand to hold, an act of such familiar, heartbreaking devotion. The room right next to this one was where she had died in my past life, her blood staining the floor. But now, she was in my arms, her head resting against my neck, her expression soft and content, like a lioness basking in the sun after a satisfying meal. Had I really managed to change her fate? The wedding was fast approaching. I started spending every day with her, staying late into the night. My mother chewed me out for it more than once, telling me I was being improper. But Candy seemed genuinely happy. She was eating more, too, and had put on a little weight. Her slender fingers weren't quite so bony anymore. One afternoon, as I was heading to her building, I saw Chloe waiting for me out front. She grabbed my arm the moment I was in reach. "She's brainwashed you, Sonny. Let's go. We can fly to LA tonight." "Are you insane?" I pulled my arm away, incredulous. "I don't care what you have to do, but I can't let you fall any deeper into this," Chloe said, her jaw tight. "You don't love her. It's just the novelty of it all. You can't throw your entire life away for this." "Whether I love her or not is none of your business," I shot back. "Don't you think you're overstepping, just a little?" Chloe's bloodshot eyes suddenly filled with a deep, tragic sorrow. All the fight seemed to go out of her, and her voice dropped to a desperate whisper. "Let's get married, Sonny. Please, you can't just throw me away like this." She looked a mess, her clothes wrinkled as if she'd slept in them, her eyes pleading for my sympathy. I remembered what my best friend told me at Chloe's wedding in my past life. If you had gotten married first, she would have lost her mind. This love at first sight stuff is a joke. What guy could compare to the history you two have? She's just been taking advantage of the fact that you've been playing the field, and she's your only close female friend. It lets her be reckless. "Chloe," I said, my voice heavy. I reached out and brushed a piece of lint from her shoulder. "Go home. I'm going to pretend this conversation never happened. I'm getting married. From now on, you need to be more careful. We can't have people getting the wrong idea." She stared at me, her eyes wide with panic, and tears began to stream down her face. "I just missed my chance by a little bit," she whispered. "Is there really no going back?" "We're friends," I said. I used the same words she had once said to me. "And if you want, we can be friends for the rest of our lives." When I walked into the office, Candy was sitting on the sofa, radiating an aura of pure gloom. "What took you so long?" I ran into a friend downstairs, and we talked for a bit. I set the box of pastries I'd brought on the table. When I turned back to her, she still looked miserable. It was strange. "What's wrong?" Candy looked up at me, a hint of hurt in her voice. "How was your chat with Chloe? How did you—" I started to ask, then stopped myself. I remembered the people she had watching me and realized it was a stupid question. I decided to just be honest. She came to see me. She wanted me to leave with her. A dark look flashed in Candy's eyes. I patted her shoulder and pulled her into a hug. But I turned her down, I said casually. I told her I like you more. Candy slowly let out a quiet, "Oh." My smile widened. "Aren't you going to praise me?" "What's there to praise?" she mumbled. "Hey, I just swore my allegiance to you right in front of another woman." I playfully pinched her cheek. "How can you not even react?" Candy looked at me, completely bewildered for a moment. Then she got up and retrieved a box from her desk drawer. She opened it to reveal a diamond-encrusted watch. It looked familiar. "Is this the one from that Sotheby's auction?" "Yes." I couldn't help but laugh. It was a beautiful watch, worth a fortune, but I remembered that Candy had paid $3 million for it. The headlines the next day had all called her the $3 million fool. "Why did you buy it?" "You like blue," she said quietly. "I thought it would look good on you." "Thank you, Candy." I wrapped my arms around her neck and rubbed my cheek against hers. "The auction was 2 months ago. Why give this to me now?" "Because you were upset today," she said simply. "I was going to give it to you for your birthday," she explained, "but I wanted to make you happy right now." "When was I upset?" I started to ask, then remembered my playful tantrum and shut my mouth, amused. She really couldn't tell the difference between someone being genuinely angry and just teasing. I squeezed her cheek. "I wasn't really mad, but I am very happy now. Candy, I think I'm really starting to fall for you." Candy's cheeks flushed as I pulled her onto my lap and kissed her forehead. Honestly, aside from that one breakdown in her office, it was hard to see any signs of Candy's illness. When she was with me, she just seemed like a normal person who was a little emotionally clueless and didn't quite get me in. But her assistant was constantly reminding me not to do anything to set her off. I finally had to ask him, "Has her condition gotten worse lately?" "No," the assistant stammered. "Actually, her mood has been much better. She hasn't needed sleeping pills at all." "Then why do you keep warning me?" "She's only gotten better because you're here," he explained. "If you get bored and leave, the consequences would be catastrophic." He was practically begging me. "I don't know what your reasons are for getting close to her, Mr. Miller, but please, I'm begging you, don't just walk away. She'll completely lose her mind. And she'll die," I added silently. I patted the assistant's shoulder. "Don't worry," I said. "I care about her more than you know. I'm no savior, and I'm certainly not a therapist. All I could do was try my best to keep Candy from falling into despair. I just wanted her to be happy. If her mood improved, everything else would follow." I was surprised when Candy's mother contacted me. It was the first I'd ever heard of her having any family at all. Her mother was from Washington, D.C. She wore the same expensive clothes and had a similar face to her daughter, but her aura was completely different. There was something sinister about her that I found terrifying. She got straight to the point. "Mr. Miller, I want you to leave my daughter." Her words stunned me. I took a sip of water to compose myself and then asked calmly, "How much are you offering?" $2 million. "It should be enough to get your family through its current crisis." I paused. I hadn't even known my family was in a crisis. I studied her for a moment, then said flatly, "It's true love. You'll have to do better than that. A watch Candy bought me cost more than that. Your offer isn't very tempting." She let out a derisive laugh. "Do you have any idea what you've gotten yourself into?" She smirked at me. "You haven't been in touch with your old girlfriends, have you? You should check on them. See how many are still around. And that little friend of yours, Chloe. You don't really think Candy will let her be, do you? And your sister. You think being related by blood will protect her? I'm telling you, Candy won't spare her either. It's a great love story you two have. Everyone around you suffers while you remain blissfully ignorant, like an idiot. Isn't it hilarious?" I frowned, my eyes filled with disgust. "I trust Candy. She's not that kind of person. Isn't she? Why don't you do some digging and find out for yourself?" She smiled, full of confidence. "They say the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Everything I did to her father, she will do to you. Mark my words. Then I assume your husband is no longer with you." "No, quite the opposite. We're very happy together now," she said with a triumphant smile. "He couldn't escape. He accepted his fate. He still has family he cares about. He couldn't just abandon everything. He's so gentle now, so obedient. He just waits at home for me every day. He's soft, docile, completely declawed. I've tamed him so that he can only depend on me, as compliant as a bird in a cage." I woke with a jolt. It had been a dream. The wind rattled the window pane, snapping me out of my stupor. I realized my back was drenched in a cold sweat. I had never met anyone as vile as Candy's mother. Just thinking about her smug theory of taming a man made me want to vomit. It was still afternoon. I'd been asleep for almost 3 hours. I checked my phone and saw 16 missed calls from Candy. I called her back, but before I could say a word, her frantic voice cut in. Why weren't you answering your phone? You met with her, didn't you? What did she say to you? Are you going to leave me? Do you want to call off the wedding? Are you breaking up with me? Stop it. I interrupted, sighing. No, I didn't answer because I was asleep. Don't jump to conclusions. Candy was quiet for a moment, her breathing heavy on the other end of the line. Then, her voice small and hurt, she said, Sonny, I'm scared. Her voice was so full of anguish it broke my heart. I sighed. She may be your mother, but to me, she's a stranger. I trust you more than I trust her. Do you understand? Candy didn't answer, just whispered, Sonny, I need to see you. She came to my house to get me. The moment I got in the car, she pulled me into her arms. She held on to me tightly, burying her face in my neck, her voice choked with sobs. Don't believe her, she pleaded. Don't believe a single word she said. I won't, I said. I rubbed her back. I only trust you. Candy lifted her head, her eyelashes wet with tears. With my encouragement, she was slowly learning to express her feelings more openly with me. Whether she was hurt, sad, or something else, she knew she could tell me instead of bottling it up. Just like now, when she said glumly, Can you promise you won't see her again? I was so scared today. When you didn't answer my calls, I felt like I was going to die. Don't say that, I said, covering her mouth with my hand. You're going to live a long, long life. My interruption seemed to snap her out of it, leaving her looking a little dazed. I ruffled her hair, a small smile playing on my lips. If you don't want me to see her, I won't. The only reason I met with her was because of you anyway. Candy, you need to have more confidence in yourself. I squeeze her hand. I don't care what anyone else says about you. I only believe what I see with my own eyes and what you tell me. You are a brilliant, wonderful person, Candy. You're incredible, and you need to believe that about yourself, okay? Candy's self-esteem was practically non-existent. I didn't know what had happened in her past to make her so timid and insecure, especially when it came to love. She was always in a panic, convinced she was unworthy of being loved. So lately, I've been taking every opportunity to praise her, complimenting everything from her looks to her intellect, her wealth to her status. I even told her she had cute fingernails. Only with enough confidence would she stop being so terrified all the time. I wanted Candy to feel safe and happy in our relationship, not constantly tense and worried about whether I was angry or how she could please me. That sounded exhausting. Candy, I'm a grown man. I can make my own judgments. I'm not going to change my opinion of you because of something some stranger says. I leaned in and hugged her. I like you, and I know how to talk. If I have a question, I'll ask you. I'm not going anywhere. Besides, you're too amazing. I'm not about to let someone else snatch you up. Candy's eyes shimmered, sparkling like diamonds. Compared to when we first met, her cold, distant demeanor had softened, replaced by a genuine warmth. She no longer seemed like a fragile doll that could break at any moment. My presence in her life was finally making a real difference. I had guessed that Candy's family life had been painful, but I was still surprised when, as she was holding me, she whispered that she hated her name. My mother hated that I came between her and my father. She gave me my name hoping I would die young. Her Chinese name, Muxiua, meant evening snow, something beautiful but fleeting, destined to melt away. Her own mother had wanted her dead from the day she was born. How could anyone be so cruel? A bitter taste filled my mouth, and I squeezed her hand. But your father must have loved you, I said. He didn't love me, Candy replied with a bitter smile. He was just trapped by me. He's not like you. He was a very traditional man. Despite his education, he was stubbornly devoted to the idea of family. After I was born, all his attempts to fight back became meaningless. His sense of duty wouldn't let him abandon me, but he couldn't provide for me on his own, so he was forced to give in. As she spoke, her voice was frantic and her eyes grew red and watery, making my heart ache for her. None of that was your fault, I said softly. You shouldn't have to suffer the consequences of your mother's actions. I stroked her soft hair and told her, with all the sincerity I could muster, Candy, you are brilliant and strong. Your father would be so proud of the woman you've become. Candy just gave another bitter smile. She leaned into my embrace. You're the only one who has ever thought I was good. So, Sunny, you're all I have. She tightened her arms around me and pleaded, you can't ever leave me. I'll go insane if you do. When I opened my email and saw the flood of harassing messages from her, I had a fleeting desire to meet her in person. I wanted to understand what kind of hatred could drive a mother to be so determined to destroy her own daughter's happiness. I took a deep breath. The emails were full of threats and photos of my ex-girlfriends, with detailed descriptions of how miserable their lives had become, all meant to convince me to leave Candy. I deleted them all without a second glance. I've been busy with wedding preparations, completely swamped with my family's guest list, so I hadn't spoken to Candy as much. That's why, when her assistant called me that evening, frantically telling me she had tried to kill herself, my mind went blank. A moment later, a chilling cold washed over me, as if I'd been plunged into ice water. Right before she did it, Candy had met with her mother. I don't know what the woman said to her, what she did to push her over the edge, but the moment her mother left, Candy cut her wrists. Luckily, they found her in time. I leaned against the wall outside the emergency room, my teeth chattering. What kind of mother does that? She had to have known how fragile Candy's mental state was, and yet she had still, without hesitation, cruelly pushed her toward death. When they wheeled Candy out, she had an IV in her arm, and her face was as white as a sheet. All the healthy color she had gained over the past few weeks was gone. I sat in the chair by her bed and just stared at her, lost in a daze, until she finally woke up. The first thing she saw when she opened her eyes was me. Her voice was raw and hoarse as she said my name. Sunny. I didn't answer. I just got up and went to get the doctor. After the doctor had left, I stood by her bed, staring down at her pale face in silence until I could see the fear creeping into her eyes. If you're angry, just yell at me, she pleaded. You can even hit me. Just don't do this, Sunny. Please don't ignore me. She seemed terrified of the silent treatment. Whenever I got quiet and distant, she would panic like a small child, tugging on my sleeve and begging for forgiveness. But this time, I wasn't going to let her off so easily. I gave her the silent treatment for a full day, watching as she grew more and more distraught, sinking into a state of confusion and self-loathing. She kept picking at the bandages on her wrist, making them bleed again, until even the doctor pulled me aside and said, you need to consider the patient's emotional state. I know, I said quietly. Don't worry. When I went back into the room, Candy was staring blankly out the window, her eyes unfocused. She looked so fragile and lost, like an empty shell. Candy, I said softly from across the room, my voice flat. She seemed to sense what was coming and squeezed her eyes shut in pain, refusing to respond. I didn't let her retreat. I said it plainly. We should call off the wedding. The vase on her bedside table crashed to the floor. For a split second, her face twisted into a mask of rage, before collapsing into utter, abject despair. Sunny, she rasped, trying to scramble out of bed toward me. The movement tore open the wounds on her wrist, and fresh blood began to flow. I moved forward and gently held her arm still, smoothing down her tangled hair. What are you going to do now? I asked her softly. Are you going to lock me away and tame me like your mother did to your father? Or are you going to keep hurting yourself because you can't bear the thought of hurting me? Sunny, she whispered, looking up at me like a frightened animal. I answered the question for her. You'd choose the second one, wouldn't you? I leaned down and kissed her, a soft, passionless press of lips. As I pulled away, I gently squeezed her cheek. Candy, you're not your mother, and I'm not your father. We will not have the same ending they did. Candy, my love, what are you so afraid of? I felt like I was finally beginning to understand her mother's twisted psychology. She knew that even though Candy's father had resigned himself to a life with her, he had never been happy. Their marriage was not the triumphant victory she had envisioned. And that's why she couldn't stand to see her own daughter find happiness. The fact that Candy had found love so easily made her feel like a failure, and it enraged her. She kept insisting to me that Candy was her daughter, and that she would inevitably repeat her mother's monstrous behavior. And she had been brainwashing Candy with the same idea. I checked the security footage from the hospital. The last thing her mother said to her before leaving was, "You just wait. As long as you're alive, sooner or later you'll give in. You'll treat him exactly the way I treated your father. And when that day comes, his future will be your father's present." I let out a sarcastic laugh. So she knew. She knew how miserable she had made her own husband, so miserable that the threat of me ending up like him was her most powerful weapon. Candy didn't want me to become her father. She didn't want to hurt me, and she was disgusted by the thought that she carried her mother's tainted genes. And so, when pushed, she had unhesitatingly chosen to end her own life. Do you see the difference between you and her now? I knelt by her bed and looked her straight in the eye. When her father tried to leave, all she could do was threaten, coerce, and imprison him. She did despicable things. But you only ever hurt yourself. I took her uninjured hand and laced my fingers through hers. Candy, do you really think a person like you is capable of hurting me? A lump formed in her throat, and she looked at me with red-rimmed, grief-stricken eyes. But I'm so scared, Sonny, she whispered. You're so wonderful, so full of life. I'm terrified I'll turn you into someone like my father. That won't happen, I told her again. Candy, we're going to be so happy together. At our core, humans can be predatory, driven by ugly, primitive desires. But what makes us human is our ability to control those desires. You were afraid you might hurt me one day, but you controlled that fear. You would rather die than lay a single finger on me. Candy, you have to believe in yourself. We've evolved. We're not wild animals anymore. I looked deep in her eyes. And please, you have to believe in me. I'm not your father. I'm not some weak-willed man who can be broken. The only reason I'm with you is because I want to be. Because I like you. I like you so much. Sonny, she whispered. Candy, I said again, my voice firm. Please believe me. I've been in enough relationships to know what I want. I'm tired of selfish games. If I hadn't met you, I probably would have given up on relationships altogether. Just like in my past life, where I died alone on a mountain. After so many flings in my youth, it all started to feel meaningless. Until I met Candy. She respected me so much, and she was so devoted. In my presence, she was as gentle and trusting as a kitten. What started as pity had naturally, inevitably, blossomed into love. No man could resist her. I arranged to meet with Candy's mother one more time. In the cafe, I looked at the impeccably dressed woman across from me and said quietly, I heard your husband used to be a diplomat, a powerful man, commanding respect on the world stage. She narrowed her eyes. What's your point? And now, I continued, he just sits at home. He's probably gotten out of shape. His mind has grown dull. He can't keep up with the world anymore. And you've grown to despise him for it. That's when you realize that the man you fell in love with, that dynamic, brilliant man, is gone. He's been replaced by this boring, nagging old man you can't stand. Am I wrong? Shut up, she hissed. She tried to cut me off, but I just smiled. And the real tragedy is, you're the one who destroyed him. I didn't know for sure if she had affairs, but looking at her, I wouldn't be surprised. All that passionate love she once felt had curdled into resentment under the strain of a miserable home life. She must have regretted it. She got everything she wanted, and it still wasn't enough. Leave Candy alone, I said quietly. She's suffered enough because of you and your husband. Don't take your own misery out on her. If you continue down this path, I said with a small, cold smile, you should know that the only reason I'm being civil to you now is because you are Candy's mother. If I find out you're trying to hurt her again, I will not be so polite. She didn't get angry. Instead, she just slumped in her chair, a dazed look on her face. I voiced a thought that was surely in her head. You're wondering if things would have been different if your husband had half my backbone, aren't you? You're wrong. If I had been in his shoes, it would have ended in mutual destruction. We both would have ended up dead. With a personality like yours, any man who falls into your clutches is doomed to a miserable existence. That finally got a rise out of her. She shot to her feet and raised her hand to slap me, but my bodyguard intercepted her, easily restraining her. A woman in her 50s, pinned to the floor of a cafe by a bodyguard. It was pathetic. I gave a small laugh and looked down at her, repeating my earlier sentiment. Mrs. Sterling, as I said, I am not your husband. I am not some weakling you can manipulate. Let me repeat myself one last time. Stay away from Candy. Or else. I picked up her cup of coffee and poured the scalding liquid over her head. I will make you regret it. I don't normally condone violence, but I have to admit, sometimes it's the only language people understand. Chicago was still run by the old families, and she knew she couldn't win a war against mine. So, seething with hatred, she disappeared. After our wedding, Candy curled up in my arms like a little kid, a goofy, happy smile on her face. Sonny, she whispered, as if she couldn't believe it. I'm finally married to you. You silly girl, I said, patting her on the back. You've had too much champagne. Go take a shower. She just giggled and stumbled off toward the bathroom. I lit the scented candles I'd bought for our wedding night and waited for her in bed. I had to admit, compared to Candy, I was definitely the more experienced one. The moment she saw me, her face turned a deep shade of crimson. It was adorable. She shuffled over to the bed and shyly reached out her hand to me. I smiled and took it. That night, I had a terrible nightmare. I dreamed of Candy's past life. After I had run away, her mother came to taunt her, saying triumphantly, "You see? Soon you won't be able to stop yourself. You'll drag him back and lock him up, just like I did with your father. Don't deny it. At your core, you're a greedy, crazy monster. His future will be your father's present. You'll drive him insane." I saw Candy, her face contorted in agony, clutching her head and roaring, "No," over and over again, surrounded by the photos of me. She didn't want to hurt me, so she had made the resolute choice to end her own life. The dream woke me with a start, my back drenched in sweat. I opened my eyes and saw Candy sleeping peacefully in my arms. I gently stroked her face, then slipped out of bed. I stood in front of the locked room, took her large ring of keys, and began trying them one by one. Finally, the lock clicked open. I stepped into the room for my nightmares. Candy's suicide, I realized, was an act of self-destruction, born from the crushing pressure and the hatred she felt for her own DNA. She had stared at the wall of my photos as the blood flowed from her wrist, feeling her life slip away, her eyes tracing over my smiling face. Even in her final moments, I was all she could see. I thought about the old headlines. Poster child for the hopelessly devoted. They weren't wrong. Even now, I still didn't understand where Candy's love for me had come from. She wouldn't tell me. I had asked her many times, but she always refused to say. I guess every couple is entitled to a few secrets. If she didn't want to talk about it, I wouldn't push her. "Sonny," I turned to see Candy, who I thought was asleep, standing silhouetted in the doorway behind me. She looked nervous and sad. "Do you think I'm a freak?" she asked. I shook my head and walked over to take her cold hand in mine. "Why are you awake?" "You were gone," she said, her voice full of hurt. "Your side of the bed was cold." I couldn't help but laugh. When we first met, she was so cold and distant, she could barely hold a conversation with me. Now, she had become an expert at being adorable. It doesn't matter if you're a child or an adult. When you're truly loved, you can't help but act a little spoiled. She seemed to remember her question and tugged on my sleeve again, asking cautiously, "So you don't think I'm a freak?" "No, it's just a little surprising," I said honestly. "I had no idea you'd been in love with me for so long. You're not mad at me. Why would I be mad? You did it because you love me." Candy's cheeks flushed, and she wrapped her arms around my waist. "You're so good to me. Does that mean you'll forgive me no matter what I do?" "I just trust that you would never do anything to hurt me," I said. I turned to face her and wrapped my arms around her neck. "I trust you. I refuse to entertain any malicious thoughts about a woman who would rather die than cause me a moment's pain. True love is rare, and mutual love is even rarer." I cherished Candy's feelings for me, just as she cherished me. And like a spoiled child, the moment she felt that love was threatened, she was ready to lash out. Take her attitude toward Chloe, for example. It took all my effort to stop her from throwing out the gift Chloe had sent over. It was a set of hand-knitted pajamas. There was a tiny heart embroidered on the chest, a clear symbol of lingering, ambiguous affection. The moment Candy saw it, she looked ready to explode. I shot her a warning look, and she just plopped down on the sofa, pouting. I ignored her and examined the pajamas myself. "What's so interesting about them?" she grumbled, leaning against me, clearly wanting a hug. I could feel her warm breath on my neck. She was clearly annoyed but didn't dare say anything, instead just murmuring softly, "Honey." All right, I said. With a sigh, I took her hand and put the pajamas in it. "You deal with them. Just don't throw them out. It would be too awkward if Chloe found out." So instead, Kenny took a pair of scissors and cut them into tiny, unrecognizable shreds. I watched her in silence for a moment before asking, "Do you have some kind of vendetta against Chloe?" She paused her shredding and mumbled a yes. "I never liked her. She was always so close to you, but she was always messing around with other guys. She was so disloyal. I had girlfriends while she had boyfriends. The hypocrisy was almost funny, but I managed to hold back my laugh. "It doesn't matter anymore," I said. I chuckled and tried to soothe her. "I'm with you now. She can't get between us anymore, right?" Candy's face went completely red. She turned away from me and mumbled a quiet yes. I never sought out specific treatment for her depression. I just treated her like a normal person, did my best to make her happy, coddled her like a child, and gave her the security she so desperately needed. And naturally, she started to get better. I worked to undo all the insecurity and sensitivity her family had inflicted on her. She grew more dependent on me, but she also became more confident and vibrant. Her assistant and I talked about it once. Honestly, I worry that the boss's emotional well-being is so dependent on another person, he'd said. But there's nothing to be done. I guess she's just a hopeless romantic. He didn't dare say the words, and I didn't say them for him. We both understood. I agree. It's not ideal, I'd replied. Her entire sense of self is tied to me. If something were to happen to me, I don't think she could go on. I sighed. But you can't have it all in life. I had accepted her, and that meant accepting all the complex, sometimes difficult parts of her personality. I didn't want to force her to change. A healthy relationship should bring both people joy and fulfillment, not painful transformation. I just wanted her to be happy. Everything else was secondary. On our 3rd anniversary, Kenny found out she was pregnant. She was a nervous wreck, anxious and withdrawn, unable to sleep. I finally had to ask her what was wrong. She clung to me, her voice small and sad. Honey, I'm so afraid I'll be a terrible mother. What if I mess up? Will you blame me? Never, I said. I stroked her hair. You will always be more important than any child. Our kid will be born with every advantage. They won't starve. Who they become and how they live their life will be up to them. Candy, you and I are the ones who are in this for life. Her eyes went wide. She looked like she wanted to say something, but couldn't find the words. After a moment, she just mumbled, "You're so strange, honey." Maybe I am, I said. So many parents, after having kids, devote their entire existence to them, sacrificing everything. I didn't want that. Life is too short not to live for yourself. Candy was different. She craved a family more than anything. In her mind, a handsome husband and a house full of children, whether they were quiet or loud, was the ultimate picture of happiness. Actually, I think you'll be a wonderful mother, I told her. Everything you wanted as a child, everything you were denied, you'll give to our baby. You'll be so good to them. And in the process of loving our child, she would, in turn, heal the wounds of her own sad childhood. That was the real reason I wanted child. For her. Candy hugged me and whispered, "You're the most important thing to me. I want a baby. I promise I'll be so good to them. So good." I know, I said with a smile. I believe you. I believe she would be happy, that she would live a long and full life. And I would be there with her, watching over her, making sure she had the happy, peaceful life she deserved. We were going to have a wonderful future together. Epilogue. Candy never told Sonny that the first time she saw him, she was huddled in a filthy alley behind their high school. She was filthy and starving, digging through a dumpster for something to eat when she saw him. He looked like an angel, standing there in his school uniform at the mouth of the alley, watching her with an unreadable expression that held a flicker of pity. He pulled $200 from his wallet and handed it to her. "Go find something else to do," the boy said, his voice gentle. "Don't do things you hate." Candy didn't know why he helped her. Maybe it was pity, or maybe he was just bored. All she knew was that Sonny Miller had saved her life. She used that money to buy a bus ticket out of town. She worked day and night, and with her natural genius for the stock market, she managed to catch the tail end of the dot-com boom. When she returned to Chicago, she was a self-made millionaire surrounded by advisors. And Sonny Miller had become one of Chicago's most notorious playboys, with a new girlfriend every other month. Candy wasn't surprised. She felt that a man as handsome and kind as Sonny deserved to be adored by women, but also made her sad. And deep down, she felt a vile, shameless, animalistic urge to capture him, to lock him away and keep him all to herself. She knew it was wrong. She fought to control it. The constant internal battle took its toll on her mind, and she became very, very ill. Forcing the marriage had been a desperate, last-ditch effort. She was so desperate to hold that angelic boy in her arms again. The loneliness was a constant torment, threatening to consume her entirely. But if Sonny had refused, she would not have forced him. She would not become a monster like her mother. And then, he had come to her. Candy felt that her whole life had been worth it for that moment. In the 6th year of their marriage, their child was 2 years old. And Candy had a dream about her past life. She saw herself dying in that cold, gray, miserable room. She saw Sunny placing a single, perfect rose beside her body. That night, after the dream, Candy stood on their balcony until dawn. She stared at the full moon, her eyes red-rimmed. It was round and bright, like a sugar cookie. A strange sadness washed over her. If Sunny had run away, her death would have been inevitable. The emotionally stable woman she was now could barely comprehend the paranoia and despair she had felt then, but it made a sick kind of sense. A mentally ill person is capable of anything. But in this life, her husband hadn't run away. "What's wrong?" Sunny asked, wrapping his arms around her waist from behind. "You seemed a little down since this afternoon." Candy felt a surge of emotion and wanted to tell him everything, but when she opened her mouth, no words came out. She turned and jumped into his arms, wrapping her legs around his waist and nuzzling his neck. After a long moment, she decided it didn't matter. Sunny didn't like to dwell on the past. He always said he wanted to focus on their future. So she let it go. Whatever had happened, or could have happened, didn't matter. In this life, he was here with her. She smiled into his neck. "I love you so much, honey."